back.
Hi, I'm sorry, I'm not getting voice, so I had to log out and come back. How are you all, guys?
Hear your voice just fine.
Now it's fine.
Yes.
Hi, Tina, how are you? Good to see you.
Yeah.
Hi,
You look
Rakesh.
today. It looks like a black and white view.
Yeah, it's very classic though. I kind of like it.
Classic view, certainly.
It's very classic looking. I think it could be something I might do. I like it. So let's talk a little bit about building the economics. You know, we've been talking about how the medical industry, of course, is going to be benefiting from all of this. But what are some other things we can do now that we're hopefully going to be opening up again? Because Abhijeet, you've had some grand ideas about pushing that reset button. And let's talk about that.
I think in every sector and in every probable area of where people have got disengaged, there has to be a balancing act to make other people engaged into it. So if you look at agriculture and horticulture, it itself has a very high potential to take lots of people or lots of laborers. Probably 10 crore people in India are they belong to labor class, and they were not at their own native places, but they migrated to metros, big cities from rural areas. And now after this COVID-19 impact, they're coming back. And since they're coming back, they have to have something to do. So what are the plans which government would be offering them? Agriculture, horticulture, fisheries, then many other things which can be done at this stage of time. It should be very scrutinized, and I think the medium which we use, media and television and social media, instead of discussing and doing sheer politics over what you have done and what he has not done, some government in one state is failed and another government is not doing so well, we should use these resources to carry these informations that how we can engage. If they will not be engaged now, there will be a liability to feed for the other class who has to give some sort of benefit or tax to bear such huge cost for government. And then it would again create a very systematic, very unsystematic social imbalance. They would not have anything to eat. There would be problems and troubles which government in coming months would face. So I would say the prime thing is people who are losing job, first thing which government should focus is to engage them. And then I'll keep on adding more things. Over to you, Kim.
One of the problems with that plan is that arable land in India is pretty much completely utilized. And the second thing is that the land holdings are so small that they are suboptimal. So in terms of engaging them with agriculture, that's going to be a challenge. I'm not saying it's impossible, but that's going to be a very serious challenge. I'll throw that open to the rest of you.
So I think go ahead, Maki.
Still in India, almost 60% job creation is agriculture. And all the people who's moved back from these metro cities to their hometown, I think we can provide some sort of rural development, because so far all the government has focused mostly on the urban development. So there is too much divide between urban and rural. So if we can focus separate for this rural development, so agriculture, horticulture, and many other things can be possible, but particularly for rural base. So that can definitely people can engage and provide the job opportunities. And similarly for this urban, where you have more skilled worker, you can have a different development plan.
So I think building hospitals in villages would be very useful. Building hospitals, building schools. If these things were affordable in the villages and easily available, you would not have the migration, the siren song of Asian cities. You would not have that. You have this attraction, this almost fatal attraction towards the cities, because you don't have the facilities in the villages. The biggest fear of the Indian government today is that if people migrate back to the villages, they will be taking the coronavirus back to the villages where there are no hospitals or not even significant medical care. And then you will have a tremendous set of, a tsunami of deaths, and there would be nobody to run your agriculture. You would have all these steel workers and all sorts of white collar workers in the cities, and no food.
And I think that's a good point. And Abhijeet also made a point that's kind of been spinning in the back of my head about training, right? We're at a point where everything has been kind of reset. We're kind of starting over. So how do we train our people going out into reentry to serve our communities and societies better? And so, I think we need to take a look at training so that the communities can become self-sustainable at this time, especially like in India, right, where you said that there are some poor sectors of all of this. And there's nothing wrong with training us on how to feed ourselves, grow our own food. We can learn to grow our own food just even in our own apartment. Right? Absolutely. If all you had is an apartment, you can learn to grow some food in there, some pots, and maybe a little grow light. And because if you don't get enough light, or if you've got a little patio, one of the things that I've noticed in some of the what I call the smart thinkers, people with flat roofs in big buildings, they've gone up to the top of the roof and they're learning to grow food up there, right? And they're also learning to recycle any rainwater. So when you start growing food and the water recycles through the dirt and gets to the roots and everything, there is a layer of stone and lime that you can have the water filter through that cleans it so that you can use it for bathing and things like that. So I think now is the time that we can start training the people to re-enter with smarter, more quality of life thoughts. Another thing I did not understand is that all of these grocery stores, and I don't know about your markets, but had all of this fresh produce going bad because everybody was storming to go for the long shelf life food. Why didn't somebody go in and turn that food into something that could be delivered to the people who needed it? Because we're talking about food that builds your immunity, but they didn't do that. They didn't. They would rather let that food go bad when you could have taken that food and served to the poverty, right? And
that is the reason, Kim, I said it is more important to focus on the food and primarily the items which we basically require to survive. Exactly. Because at this stage of time, if you do not multiply your economic growth, but you still remain alive until the virus vaccine is it will take some months. I guess it is coming out, and again people are, and they are coming proven to be a hoax. It's not a medicine, it's not a vaccine. So we have to survive for another at least 2 years. If not, then at least 18 months. If we look at the timeline, what would be the most important thing which this entire population of all countries will be needing is the food. Horticulture, agriculture, and fishery and other things which we can do primarily increases the production of food. And if the food production is increased, government and the transport system is capable to take it from the production place to the distribution channels. It is still working. So there would not be poverty, there would not be a starvation. And people who have lost their jobs, they will be back to jobs. So what would not happen after doing this is economic growth. Economic growth can be done anytime if you survive.
Yes, exactly. You can always rebuild your economy. The cash, you're right. The cash starts generating and recycling when you've established a means for people to eat and survive. And when they're living, they make a living. And we need to establish that. I think agriculture is, here in America, the only people allowed to get the SBA right now are people in agriculture. They've cut the SBA off from anyone else, and only people with agriculture businesses can get the loan. But I think we need to teach each household. There's a saying, you can feed a man fish and he can eat for a day, or you can teach him how to fish and he will eat for a lifetime, right? And we need to teach our people how to grow food in their own home. And it can be done. You can do hydroponic if you know, get some fish, right? Because the fish fertilizes the plants, and you can grow plants just in water. And that's something I'm teaching myself how to do. How can I grow more efficiently, more effectively the plants I have, and get the most produce out of them? And this is how we each need to start thinking. And granted, I can't grow everything I need or like to eat. Like I like, a lot of foods that come from somewhere else, but I can grow most of what I need and what I like. And it doesn't have to be grown with a lot of insecticides either. I've learned how to grow flowers, certain flowers around my plants, and the bugs don't eat them. So I think we need to train people how to become self-sustainable in their own community. There needs to be a consultant that could go around and go, oh, here's a flat rooftop. How can we turn it into solar power for the community? How can we turn it into a garden to feed the community? How do we teach the community to do this together? And everybody can take turns, right? And you do this by incentiveness, not by punishment. But if you go up and you help grow the food, guess what? You get to take it home to your family, right? So these, and it can be fun. You can make it fun and engaging. It doesn't have to be a chore. There are just so many other things. And, our way of transportation is going to have to change, right? And I was listening very hard because I know this is one of your interesting projects as well. Our form of transportation needs to change. It always has, because the way we do it now, it pollutes the world. It's not economical, and it's not safe. There are some last mile solutions that we can focus on, complete electronic, and I don't like autonomous driving vehicles. But now that we've kind of experienced this COVID situation, I'm kind of into, let's take a look at that so that a car can come pick me up and drive me to the doctor without somebody being in it to infect me, right? And how do we sanitize that car after somebody uses it every time? And these are all science fiction movie talks too, if you think about it.
We're doing it.
Yeah, we are. I mean, I've been watching the autonomous driving cars for quite some time, and I interviewed the CTO of Ford, and that was their big project that year. And he kept saying, "Well, why don't you get in the car and try it?" I'm like, no, this girl ain't ready for that. But I think I am now. I think my mind is perhaps if we had this, there would be more ways for people to get to where they need more economically and safer. So what are your thoughts on that?
When initially during a project called Vande Bharat, Government of India started extracting people from different parts of the country.
My mind is perhaps if we had this, there would be more ways for people to get to where they need.
Sorry, it was giving you echoes. So initially when the project of Vande Bharat is started, Government of India started extracting people from different parts of globe where people were stuck due to COVID-19. When they came back to India, there was issues to provide them transport. So initially for 2,500 kilometers, a very painful fact that came out that government has to charge through a taxi 10,000 rupees. Later, when we step in, we try to know why it is so high, because people who are coming, they are spending 10,000 Indian rupees for coming from a country to India, and then for next 250 kilometers, they are going to again be charged 10,000 rupees. So it's too bad for them. Plus, if economic is set to be open now, if somebody who has to send their product out of the state, or somebody who has to get raw material for their factory from out of the state, if they will pay such a high charges, then it will be practically impossible to bring back the economy. We got only one answer, that it is due to lots of state approval is involved. That's why it is becoming very difficult for people to pass, to provide a pass, or to issue a pass. Primarily, it is something which is absolutely against ease of doing business. And if economy has to come back on its own, then people will have to understand. Even government sector would have to understand it's not possible for a trader or a small manufacturer to pay such a high price, 10,000 rupees for 250 kilometer for taking his raw material or for sending his products out of the state. So they will not be able to open it. And now one of our partner company who is into electric cars, they started the same service from New Delhi airport to Ghaziabad, Noida, Faridabad, and Gurgaon in 1,000 rupees instead of 10,000. So
Wow.
more is there to come up with each sector. We are starting a discussion on giving opportunity to people who have lost their job into construction sector and other sector which were prominently based in the uh, large cities, and now they have moved. The laborers have moved to their native places, but they are free there. They don't have a job there. So from Monday onwards, we are trying to start a cluster-wise program so that we can suggest them how and what kind of horticulture or what kind of cash crop you can get yourself involved in, and what kind of support government is giving. Seed is available, fertilizers are available, some sort of capital loan is also available for starting them, and cluster by cluster we will also give them the knowledge as per the weather. India is a very huge country as per the weather and nature. So in each cluster, what kind of mango or lychee or what kind of fruit or spice or vegetable you can grow, that also we will relay with our experts on the agriculture. So I think we are starting from Monday and hope it goes well and give some engagement to people.
Yeah,
I think because of the current situation and migrants have shifted to their native places, can we see a rise in agriculture in the next couple of years?
Not next, have to rise within this year, within few months. There has to be a transition of the pattern on which we were working. It is not very easy to bring them back. They are not ready. They have gone through lots of pain, and for government to win their trust, it will take at least 1 year.
Yeah.
Second thing, if they will sit down there, if they will not have anything to do, then they will die because of starvation. And these 10 crore people not let government sit also. So there would be lots of very unfortunate situation and very unfortunate economic or social imbalances. To come out of this, to engage them, agriculture is one of the very important part. Second, the essential services which can be taken. So I think last week only I spoke about how aggressive government is into giving licenses for hand sanitizer, because hand sanitizer requirement is very high in India. All hospitals and all organizations who are opening up, they have a very high requirement of hand sanitizer, and it is not as per the requirement. It is not in supply. So new manufacturers and people who were involved into paint and spices and into different type of chemical manufacturing unit, they can move to production of hand sanitizer, provided they will get a license and some support. So we did a program last week to make them understand how easy and how aggressive government and serious government is to make you and give you good support here. So necessary activities, and what you have asked is the growth into income and some more very basic to survive type of ecology we will have to discuss, we will have to develop, and I think not only this but more towards being and living close to nature, what we discussed with Rakesh and a couple of previous episodes, is required for India to to bring into practice, so that people outside India could understand if it can be practiced. People are not dying, they are developing immunity, and if they're eating well, if they are doing yoga or naturopathy or Ayurvedic, I am not expert of that subject, but there are lots of things which gives you very high immunity, and these knowledges are there in our ancient legacy. If these are practiced and people come out, then obviously it will create not only an ecosystem but also a product for the globe.
And I agree with you. And I think these are things we need to focus on.
And also, when you talk about agriculture, I think we have to focus on the warehousing, because that is an important part. Post once we have the production is ready, if we don't have a good warehouse, if we don't have the good equipment to manage the warehouse, that ways that we can save a lot of food. And also when you talk about warehousing, the lodging and the logistics are also important. So if we can bring more electric vehicles and things like that to create a more sophisticated environment or infrastructure for farmers, so that they can directly do the selling and buying, and they'll get good amount of money. They'll be happy staying home and doing whatever they can do at the native places. So are we doing anything on that part as well, the warehousing part and the electric vehicles part for farmers?
For warehousing part for farms, for agriculture?
Yeah.
And the second thing what you have asked for is the electric vehicle, about
how we can integrate the electric vehicle in that farming culture, because they also use a lot of vehicles and they use diesel and all those things. So if we can bring electric,
we're doing pretty good progress on it, but anything which primarily right now at this stage of time requires an intervention or a development which need to be done into a very high-tech capacity plant or a lab, it would be very difficult to do it at this stage of time. Lots of unit and facilities are closed, and it would not start only for one or two things. And the discussion with the point which you are asking is electric vehicles can be used into farming or not. It would take some fitment and upgradation to use for that purpose. But right now, vehicles which are there in the system, primarily electric vehicles, they can be very well used and very well utilized for doing transportation and for doing transportation of public also. And one more very important system which India is developing, and it needs to be very quickly developed, otherwise it will become a disaster for us, is the issuance of pass and multi-state entry. Very important, and it need to be monitored on an IoT device or into a device where it can be accessed and it can be verified at each checkpoint very easily by a mobile or handheld device. Otherwise, it is very difficult for one state police to understand and recognize a pass which has been issued by another state police. If it would not come into immediate practice, then people will not be able to travel, even if the genuine reason or a genuine amount of concern or necessary products they are carrying, they would not be able to reach to their destination. Their products will not be able to reach to them, and it will create lots of lockdown economic arrest into the revival or the entry strategy, which I am seeing. And it is not happening as of now, so it's an area of concern for me.
Oh, that's interesting.
In last couple of months, particularly, we have some great example, particularly when you talk about PPE kit. So when it is well coordinated efforts, 3 months back before March, there was not any single manufacturer of PPE kits in N95. And today India, world's second largest manufacturer. And as from domestic need, now they're in the process to exporting to other countries. And I am sure it is now sanitization. The sanitizer is also on the pipeline. Maybe India, going to be one of the largest manufacturer of sanitizer also. So it's about coordinated efforts, and of course, a little bit training is required. We have passed a very great example like cooperative movement. Particularly if you see the milk productions and other things, India had did it wonder as for the rural market is concerned. So if we engage all these people with training and of course government policies in place, so very much possible that we can engage most of the unemployed, semi-skilled, and to their location itself. So rightly mentioned, one of our very prominent industrialist, Ratan Tata, owner of Tata Group. 2020 is the year of survival. It is not about the business. And it is very much coming across the world. We are seeing it is how you make yourself more stronger. And again, India is contributing in that direction quite well, particularly as for the Ayush immune system is concerned. So traditional Ayush medicine is coming more stronger. How you can make yourself more, not only the healthy diet, but it has how it can be immune your system so you can sustain with any kind of disease. So these are the some good examples we can always replicate in other industries also.
And also to add on this, I mean, both Abhijeet and Mukesh, aware about Chyawanprash. I think we have to market that product because that has all kinds of immunity boosters, and we are used to have taken it from past so many years. And I don't know. I mean, Abhijeet, I feel that we are not marketing our product the way we should. I mean, that's what our Prime Minister also wanted. That that there are a lot of local and global brands of Chyawanprash, but we are still not be able to do it. And I am getting a lot of calls every week or so. They want Chyawanprash from India with a good quality Chyawanprash, and it's difficult. So yeah,
there is a end to everything if it is alive. And primarily the definition of development which we took up, I'm not talking about only being Indian, but being a global citizen, was basically a very huge lie. When we started developing and when we thought that education and the kind of education which Europe has or Western world has, it makes them very more immune than us because they take care of their lifestyle and their things more. Second, the kind of health system and the kind of health services, the ICU and CCU they have, the kind of advancement they have into their life is again a sign of development, which proven to be wrong into COVID-19 pandemic. And the countries which are like Tibet or Nepal or India, they have less cases. They control COVID. It is a proven fact now after World Bank discussion and the report that India has controlled COVID-19 impact very well with the lockdown. And it will come back with its economic reforms also. But primarily at this stage of time, when we see what has actually gone wrong, then only thing which comes up are very blunt and very true that everyone across the globe is at the same time, at the same period, thinking about same thing. That if we are not, if this was not the development, then what was the development? What is the development right now? Development is immunity, and immunity which gives you actual word meaning of the literal meaning of the immunity above the virus. And it does not come only by eating fruit or doing anything which has been coming into practice. It is coming through living very close. So Chyawanprash is a product, but the lifestyle which India has been promoting and the lifestyle which India has been giving to the world is not only a product, but it's an entire cycle of the day. Yoga is a part of it. Naturopathy is a part of it. Living and walking and doing lots of things, Surya Namaskar and many things is a part of it. So that lifestyle need to be brought into, and then the product is not Chyawanprash, then the product is the immunity. And that immunity is above the COVID-19 and n number of virus attack it can handle. It came into science, it came into Science Journal very well that COVID-19 cannot kill certain people who have an immunity level of a certain level. Still in this program, into this episode also. Why these kind of immunity level, where do they exist? How we can achieve it? This is the area of research which globe will start very soon. And I'm not very, you will say, proud about it because we have not done justice to our own legacy and our own Vedic wisdom also. But India would come up as a very prompt destination for giving lifestyle coaching to the world now.
I think that we need to start developing those standards now. Like you said earlier, we need to stop pointing the fingers at who did what. And we need to start taking a look at building and establishing the footprint moving forward. And that can be done. And I am a true believer that there are certain cultures that develop your body a certain way, right? So what works for you that might build your immunity up to where it needs to be to fight this might be different than what will work for me. I might need something different. So I think we need to take a look at that as a globe too, that there's not going to be one pill or one vaccine that's going to fix us all. And I think you're right. We need to establish ourselves that we need to learn to live with it and build ourselves up. And that's a business in itself. Really, it is. I mean, it's not just medicine, right? It's a practice. It's a lifestyle.
Difference between the DNA of a monkey or ape and human being is only 0.3%.
And it comes, right?
No difference between the structure of an Indian or an American or a Chinese or a European or a Russian. It does not fit. That is due to weather and other condition. We are brought up and we landed up having different type of races. But as a globe, when we are staying on Earth, there is a certain type of environmental common thing which we all experience. That is the gas nature and the heat and the water. And so these immunities are built on very basic things. There might be difference of herbs and the medicines which you may get in India or you may not get in some other place. But if it is available in any part of the world or any part of the country, it should be utilized to the max. So India's nature and its philosophy never had a proud on it. That has gone wrong and against it also. But it never thought and believed into supremacy. If they would have believed into supremacy, they would have gone up or they would have been very proud. But particularly, but particularly,
we believe in live and let live.
Yes, absolutely.
We don't
This is
believe
the US. This is live and let live, and this is how the US does it. And Kim tries to be so good, and then I always say, but this is, how it. But no, you're right. You are so right. We have to. But I want to do this on a global basis. I want to reset that button. I think for so many years, even though we say we're doing things globally, we really haven't. I don't think we really made that connection. And I think now is the time we can, right? I think now is the time we can erase all of the barriers that have been there, right? And start building the bridges that need to exist. Don't build walls anymore, build bridges. And, Ankit, I think you said, if I want to come to India, I want to come to India. If I want to go live, there should be no more barriers. It just, and I don't see why we can't start establishing one humanity rule. And you know what? Everybody says United States. That's BS. There ain't nothing united about this country. Nothing. I mean, each state has its own laws. But each state has its own laws. So I could be doing something in North Carolina and it's illegal, and I do it in Colorado and it's legal, right? So I could be doing something common and everyday in Colorado. When I come to North Carolina, I could get arrested for it. So there's no united here, and we work very divided. And you know what? If you ever looked at the rule of the divide and conquer, anyone could conquer us. In fact, I think they already have. China owns all of our money. They own all of our banks. They own all of our oil. They own most of our real estate. They really do. And I think they own us they own all of our pork. I mean, they bought all of our pork factories several years ago. So, I mean, and probably some other things in our food. But again, where we were talking about food is where we need to really build ourselves. We need to feed ourselves and get hungry. Did we just lose 2 people?
Yeah.
Okay. I guess because of technology, maybe.
Bandwidth, and I think Rakesh is already late. It's 11:30 in Hong Kong.
Yeah, he has to leave. I love the fact that he comes and at least shares with us some inspiring words. You know what I enjoyed the other day was when he shared with his shoe kit, his kit, right, of what they use in Hong Kong to get around in. And I'm going to make a kit. Yeah, when in town.
Wow. Oh.
I think we need to make an essential kit from IBM.TV to the world, right? And give it out for donations. I'll contact some manufacturers and see if they'll work with us, or maybe the dollar store.
Yeah, but Kim, if we talk about anything which we need to do correctly in our future post-COVID, I think AI is something which will take its own chances, and also AI is very important, and it's a matter of time how we will integrate AI with a lot of things, and then how we can extract the data and then take decision based on those data. That is more important. And I think artificial intelligence in healthcare and agriculture, in different fields in economics, If we started working toward that, I think we can get good results. Because I know that people are talking about AI since a lot of years, but when you talk about root level, you don't see the practical implementation. People still discuss about it in books, and then artificial intelligence will happen with this and that and all those things. But realistically, it's not happening. If we start doing it and then we start reading the data and then we start taking decisions based on AI, I think that could be a way forward. What do you think, Mukesh?
You rightly mentioned that AI is a quite a vast subject and it is being used anywhere and everywhere.
Yeah.
But actual implementation, I think, started just a couple of years back. So it can be through AI. Your decision making process would be more predictable. You will be more sure about what you are trying to achieve. So that is one thing. So to large extent, it is happening. So now products are coming, even like some medical products with AI, it is coming, and even our day-to-day life, we have seen this. Google is got entered to everybody's home. So it is there now. Again, within AI, there are so many different divisions. So what kind of AI it is for the product development, or it is for this just conversational like things there. So many things can be automation possible, and irrespective of industries, it is there. In fact, we are working just one part of this AI, that is conversational AI. So like, and more generally, it is been called as a like chatbot. So when you
Yeah.
have a smart chatbot, earlier it was only text. Now we have voice based also, and it is great that on Wednesday you are going to have voice based.
Yeah.
So and it is now multilingual, so it can be many things. So all these are in the process, and with when we have data and other things we go. So I'm sure that today is a COVID-19. Tomorrow there would be some other. So at least like weather forecast, you are forecasting something. Maybe there would be possibilities that yes, next wave of new virus is coming. Get alert better. So situation will be not remains the same. So I think more and more utilization of artificial intelligence in every kind of possibilities. I think we need to move forward towards that.
You
But
know,
Mukesh,
artificial intelligence.
we can forecast the next wave using AI.
It is, see, is all these about the data. Like if you know that it is there is a set patterns. This the way a virus is changing the behavior. We have seen this COVID-19 where behavior has been changing. Some countries is different. Some countries it is a different way. It is coming. Sometimes it is symptom is coming, but sometimes symptoms are not coming at all. But over a period of time. So yes, if you capture it scientifically, and yes, based on the algorithm, another thing, it is possible to predict at certain level.
And you
But
know, I will tell you, I'm an engineer by trade, and developed predictive policing analytics to be used by law enforcement. And as I tell everyone, especially when I'm on a speaking engagement, AI is only as intelligent as the HI. Okay.
Yeah.
Period. It is all in how you utilize the data you collect, because you know AI relies on HI. I don't care, you
Right.
know. Okay, so you have
Correct.
to have human intelligence in order to understand what your AI is going to do, and the thresholds you establish, and the analytics that are going to be used to generate the outputs that you want. And that's, you know, one of my inventions utilizes that on a very high level, but it's only as smart as the HI, and that's what we have to tell people. Don't 100% rely on it. All right, understand it, understand the purpose, and use it to make your job easier and more efficient, but
Correct.
not replace humans. Do not use it to replace humans, and do not use it as a 100%. This is what you, because it can make a mistake, because again, it's only as smart as the data you put into it.
and
And
that is what, if the data quality is not good, I mean, the AI will work according to the data. And we
that's
are
right.
seeing the current COVID-19 also, we are getting different data from different sources, and we are not sure how many people have been diagnosed and what's going on. So I know that it's based on an algorithm, but if you don't have a correct data source, if you don't have a quality data, that is a problem.
Well, this is what I tell people: start somewhere, right, and experiment with it. Don't expect it to be 100%, and then develop it a little at a time in stages, right? And test your theory out, and develop a little bit more, and test your theory out, because again, it's only going to be as good as the HI that's put into it. And the data, again, the data could be real stupid. It could be wrong. I mean, for example, the more people we test for COVID, the more people we find to be infected.
Yeah, that's what's happening.
And I tell people, of course, because we're testing more people. It's not that the test kits are making them sick, and it's not that all of a sudden they were always sick, but it's because we're able to test them. I mean, where's the brain thought there, right? Because somebody's brought up, well, when we stopped testing, the infectious rates went down, and I go, duh. Let's think about this. So we got to think smart when we're developing AI. Again, AI is HI on steroids. That's all I got. Caffeine and steroids. AI is supposed to think faster, better, more efficient. It's not supposed to, but you can make it to be predictive, right? If you develop your algorithms in a certain way to generate alerts in certain ways, yes, you can develop it to be somewhat predictive. Like if you attach it to all of your meters on an oil rig, and when each of those meters start building to reach a certain threshold of pressure, and your AI is trained to understand that if it exceeds this pressure, there's danger. If 5 of them exceed this pressure, there's even more danger, right? Then it's out there getting all of this data all day long. It's not a human going out and calculating. So it's going to be able to give you more of a real-time alert when the pressure is about to exceed its threshold, or maybe you need to send an engineer out there. That's how it works. It's not, it is kind of replacing a human job, but maybe it's making their job better, right? It's making him understand I've got 5 of them reaching full capacity, or I've got 1 of them. So, that's the way you need to use AI in many, many cases. If we took a look at Worldometers, which it hasn't updated quite yet. It's in the middle of an update. Yeah. I don't know, Ankit, if you've gone out and looked at it sometimes, but sometimes it's all skewed because I think they're in the middle of an update.
I've checked out a lot of mistakes. So I think a couple of days back, I got to know while I was going through the Worldometer, it says that in UK, 4,400 people have died. And I was surprised. I took a screenshot. And then after half an hour, I checked it. They said 43 people have died. So there is always a lot of data issues, and maybe entering the data or whatever the sources they are getting, we are not sure which data is, good quality data and what are the data sources. And I believe that people or governments are underreporting somehow in the COVID-19 thing.
I don't think they're all reporting every day, and Worldometer, they don't do a constant meter update by the minute like they do on some of their stuff. But let's take a look. Oh, that's United Kingdom is out of date. So let's just look at the overall. But say if we used artificial intelligence and it established some thresholds.
But the problem is that we can use artificial intelligence, we can use HI, but that there is political intervention as well, which is happening in between the data, and that's how we lose the right data.
Yeah, I mean,
ultimately, all this data master is human. Yes.
Go ahead, please. Sorry,
Abhijeet, I can't hear you.
Yeah, you can hear me now.
Yes, sometimes you fade out, but yes, I can hear you now.
Is it clear now? Hello. Is it clear now?
Yes.
I think you need to join again. I think because there is some problem. It's a delayed thing. Yeah.
All right.
Yes.
So let's take a look at the Worldometers, real-time world stats. Not the United Kingdom, the other one. All right. Because I've been keeping up with United Kingdom because I'm kind of doing business there right now. But also, I don't know if you people heard, but recently I think just yesterday the president had announced that he's going to cut off Brazil from doing business. I haven't had a chance to read the article, but anyway, we're looking at worldwide 5,542,000. I mean, that's I don't think that's ever happened at least in our lifetime. But look at the deaths. We're almost at 500,000. And if we scroll down, and again, if it were me and I wanted to establish a footprint of how to re-enter, I would take data like this and then go out and talk to some of the countries, especially the ones who never officially closed down, the ones who kept their schools open. And I would find out what did they do different to keep their infected rates down and keep their death rates down. I mean, I just learned Iceland did such a fabulous job at this because of the way they tested. You know, they didn't test anybody who already had symptoms because they didn't want to waste their test. But they put them in isolation. You could have the flu or COVID. We don't care. Stay away. And we're going to test people who have no symptoms just to find out who might have it. And then they figured out who to let go to school so that schools could stay open. But take a look. You know, USA is definitely not the footprint to follow. You know, and our new cases just jumped up tremendously. Ankit, have you noticed that? Is Ankit there?
But I think, Kim, this is the morning time in US and today's holiday as well. So we might get the real data tomorrow morning. What do you think?
But still, this is pretty bad. 4,789. Yeah, this is still yesterday's
data. Yesterday's data, it's around 19,000 new cases in US.
How many?
If you check yesterday's data, it says around 90,000 new cases in US.
Wow, I didn't know that. Is that yesterday's data or today?
Just click on the yesterday link, you'll get to know.
So let's scroll down. Oh, they haven't reported. They're in the middle of changing right now. So we'll let them. They're in the middle of upgrading. But look at New York, 371,000.
Wow.
371,000.
And you know, the third is Illinois, and the dean of GIS Business School will be joining us in half an hour from now. He's from Illinois.
But again, you know, when I look at this, you know, North Carolina, everybody keeps bragging that North Carolina is doing good, but we had 600 new, and this was over the weekend. I know that we went up because we reopened, and we're not exactly the brightest bulbs. So I figured we're going to have that's why everybody said, well, what are you going to do? And, you know, all my friends, we're having parties, we're doing this. And I'm like, I'm staying home. And they go, when are you going to come out? I go, I'm going to come out in about 4 to 6 weeks if I see that there's not a huge infected rate. You know, and everybody goes, oh, you're living in fear. So yeah, I'm living. There's a key to that. I'm living. So it's not fear, it's facts. And the facts are, I don't think we're ready. I don't think we had good sound stages in place. One of the reasons why Iceland survived so well is they had a pandemic plan. Go figure. They had a pandemic plan. So when the one person was found infected, they put the pandemic plan into action that day. They didn't talk about it. They didn't ask, are we going to be hit economically? They just put it into action, and testing, they attribute testing to their success. So
I'm surprised, Kim, we don't have a world pandemic organization. I mean,
we did. They fired him. Our president fired him.
This is a world pandemic organization like WHO, and they should
WHO's job.
The data and master data and things like that, just to understand what's going on, and also the best practices. And whenever there's a pandemic happening in some continent or somewhere, the team should automatically get active and do their task.
So, you know what I'm confused about? I'm confused about why we have three different organizations that get funded that do not work together. We have the CDC, we have the WHO, and we have the NFID. And quite honestly, if I were going to follow any of their advices, it would be the NFID, right? National Foundation of Infectious Diseases. And the NFID, it's a infectious disease doctor you want on site during a pandemic or an epidemic, because that's who saved the people in Nigeria when the Ebola hit them in 2014. It was an infectious disease doctor. It wasn't the mayor. It wasn't the president. It wasn't a scientist. It wasn't a doctor. Infectious disease. Okay. And that's what I think we're kind of confused. Why are we funding three different organizations? Okay.
World Bank was, I think it was made because of the reason which Ankit has listed just now. That there has to be an external company and has to be an external agency which can go cross-border. And it can have a depth knowledge of all countries, particularly about the human health. And when there is a development or when there is a crisis, where not as a country, but something which has happened, it is also listed into World Bank details, the memorandum. I don't know the exact terminology, but into the main reason it is listed that if there is an biological weapon, if there is an crisis due to war, then WHO and United Nations, they have to go there and they have to provide crisis management and support to people. But at this stage of time, the requirements which Ankit listed just now is the exactly same which World Bank was supposed to do and which they have terribly failed. So obviously there is a gap which they have created, and I'm glad that Kim is saying that the president has fired them. It is not working. If it is not serving the purpose, there is no point. But
well, the thing is that we had an NFID foundation. See, I don't understand why we were paying three. This is the problem I have. Why are we not letting one? It should have been one, and it should have been global. Period. It should have been global. There should have never been classified information. That's irritated me since day one. They had classified information on health. No, you don't have classified information on health. So whoever this next organization is, I would even nominate us, because at least we talk openly about it. But whoever this next organization is, they have to be extremely transparent. They cannot be funded for the purposes of intellectual property. They have to understand that nothing they do is for their own personal gain or for the organization's gain. It is purely for the world information. And I think that the National Foundation of Infectious Disease, the doctors there tried to sound the alarm back in February. They were reaching out. They were contacting not FOSSI, not CDC, not WHO, but the NFID. I've got videos of them going everywhere they could. Just listen to us, people. If we don't do something soon, we're going to be in trouble. Those are the people we should have had taking care of all of us. Those were the guys who they're the ones who roll up their sleeves and get their hands dirty when something like this happens. And so I agree with you, Abhijeet. Firing the people that were supposed to be doing this job is the first thing we need to do. So this is not a situation where it's like cybersecurity and all that happened was you lost all your money. This is a situation where your decisions to not act appropriately killed people, lives were at stake, and not.
India is now chairman of World Bank.
Yeah.
After this, so people who are not working and acting properly, our prime minister will make sure they will act properly.
If you talk about that World Bank chairmanship, this is for 3 years. And, is it a full-time chair or is it still chair we can share with someone?
It's a revolving chair. It is not permanent. It takes time, and meanwhile also there are provisions that how it can be it can be joined or it can be shifted to somebody else. But primarily it is for 3 years, and there might be an extension again if it is voted that way. But these 3 years are the most important 3 years for World Bank, when Prime Minister of India and India as a country is having the chairmanship. And I'm not sure how much uh, anger and how much this differences are already there between the chairmanship and the last management, who was, I don't know at what level, involved with China to hide this pandemic and to not to stop or not to raise a flag in time flag, I would say. If they would have done this, then world at least would not have gone into such a pandemic. Only China would have affected, and that is what World Bank was supposed to be doing. When there is a requirement, they have a fund and they do it. They have been doing it from a long period. That there is a requirement, there is a crisis, then World Bank has to step in with United Nations if it is a war crisis, and if it is only a health crisis, then they have to provide grants so that it can be taken back and it can be cured into that area. They are not supposed to be waiting for the economic condition of the country or the state, whether they are capable or they are in strength to handle with the health situation of the people out there or not. They have sufficient money to provide a grant and take care of it. So when in China this pandemic initially got flagged out, World Bank was supposed to be going there and giving all type of support which it is required, but to stop the virus transmission at there only, not to the world. But this is the place where they failed. The kind of information update which other country were required, how to detect it, how you can stop it at your airport, or if somebody is trying, and even if it is required, United Nations could have been involved, because if you stop flights who were going across the globe from China, there were still methods to send the virus out of the country through the border areas who are connected with the roads and land. If it is required, United Nations should have been guarding those borders so that people do not cross it. But nothing happened. So prime objective of both of these organizations is under scanner, that how did they fail? Why did they fail? Is there a case of bribery, or is there a case of inclination towards China, or there was a settlement between them and China? And I'm sure that in coming time, such more investigation would come up. Paris has spoken about the investigation. France has spoken about this investigation. Australia is in favor of doing a very strong investigation into this matter.
No, I think that when we look at some of these things, was it greed? Was it a political move? We're going to have to address this eventually, because these things, this impacted the world in the worst of ways. China, I think eventually we're going to have to build a bridge there, whether you want to or not. That's a lot of people. I think eventually, I mean, and I'm going to be I'm going to be honest. I'm going to be very transparent right here, right now. And a lot of people already know this. I've worked with Huawei, not for them, but I've worked with them. Do I trust? No, oh, heck no. No. They lied, they cheated, they stole, they steal intellectual property. They do all the things that you would expect out of a country that people talk about China is, right? I try to keep my mind open and establish that not every human being in China is that way, right? Just because these people were, I try to be open-minded, because there are a lot of people, and I like to believe that majority of humanity is better than the few that are not. So there, there are issues with China. Their government style is not the standard as everyone else's, right? The way they run their country, they run it in fear. They demand it. They don't command. See, they haven't learned the gift of a commanding country as opposed to what a demanding is. They drive in fear as opposed to inspiring, and that's the difference. And I think if they were taught that you can inspire people to respect you, maybe that could be a bridge that could eventually be built. They're not humbled from this experience at all. They are not humbled from what happened, and that's the problem, right? When you've got a country like India who took and reacted as quick as they did, and they did a worldwide let's join hands together prayer day and things like that. This humbled India. All right. This humbled Italy. This humbled Canada, I think. This humbled a lot of countries. It did not humble the US. And it did not humble China. and it did not humble Russia. Right. And so when I look at these factors, and I'm not going to speculate anything, but I have to look at those three things. What do they have in common and what don't they have in common? Right. So look at the countries that have been humbled. Look at the countries that changed their footprint to address this matter. But quite honestly, what I'd like to do is start establishing something that goes one tier above the way we've been operating. And that's so what that our leaders aren't working together. Let's find a community that we trust within ourselves and build our own island, right? Build our own community that we trust each other worldwide. And just so let me tell you why. Because we were having global board meetings once a week. Remember, Sasha? Every Friday? Remember, Ankit? And we were talking to people from all over the world, right? That would just dial in. And all of a sudden, I started listening to what they were saying, not to what my government was saying here in the U.S. And I have friends in the higher office. And I started listening to what everyone else was saying around the world. And I go, oh my gosh, this is really bad. And then I started listening to the NFID guy. And I'm like, why isn't the president listening to the NFID? Then I started reading the articles out of John Hopkins that said that it was aerosol. Yet my president was saying it's not airborne. My leaders were saying it, but aerosol is airborne. So I started listening to the global board and I shut down early. It made me think about all the data that was really going on. And that's why I say we just need to get a trustworthy group of people and maybe just start doing business worldwide. And then other people will join, right? And then we can be selective about that. But we could share our own health information. We can share our own business information. Ankit and I do this all the time now. Sasha and I, we share other things now, not just what's good for IBM TV. What do you think about that?
Kim, when you are doing a business, automatically all the businesses are globally. That is what I believe. Whatever you are doing, it's automatically global now, because if you are online, if you are doing something, if you are buying, you know that a lot of products which is only produced and distributed in India locally, but you will find the same product in US and all other countries as well, because people buy it for their own use and then they use it and consume it in different countries. So nothing is local right now. It's all global. And for global and to understand what's going on in different countries, you need to talk, you need to communicate with people around the world. And that's how you build your relationship.
And it's just finding that trustworthy link. It's just finding the people you trust. And if I had not have been hearing all of this about what was going on in the whole world, you and I would have never started it. We're going, we got to get this out. We got to share, because people are only listening to what's going on in their own world, and there's something really big going out there. And it was because of sharing that kind of information on a global basis, I was knowledgeable enough to do what I had to do. I stocked up to lock down. This is what I told everybody 2 weeks early, before the president said anything. I stocked up and locked down. And I feel like that saved my life. I really do, because of the people that have been getting infected around here without any consideration, because I was booked to travel. I don't know if you know this, but I was booked to go to the World Leaders Conference in Houston, Texas. And that's where all the people from all over the world come in. And they were not going to refund our trip, but I canceled it. Nick and I took a vote based on what we were hearing, and we canceled everything. And on the same day that we pushed the button to cancel, they canceled, so we got our money back. But I think that conversations like ours should have been happening, and that they weren't. I mean,
and that too without filters, basically, so that we can share the right information without just looking for what to share and what not to share. And I would like to ask Abhijeet that, you know that domestic flights have already started in India. And now we are seeing a lot of flights are cancelled as well, and a lot of things going around. And then people who will travel to certain states, they have some kind of quarantine days where they have to keep themselves away from family, and then they can go out. But there are a lot of things happening in the railway as well. Couple of days back, people were traveling from one place to the other, and they stopped the train in between, and then they just ran out. So how can we control these kind of situations? Because you know that, we understand that those people have to reach out their home, but there are a lot of things which we need to manage and which we need to register, and also we need to track people what they're doing for at least a couple of days, so that the contamination or the spread won't happen. What do you think about that?
See, when we are talking about it, then you have to understand we are talking about 10 crore people. 10 crore means almost 10 million.
Yeah.
100 million.
100 million. Sorry, 100 million people. So 100 million people have to be displaced. They are the laborers who have migrated from their own place, from the native place to a metro city or a big city for their work, and they have to come back. There is no registration system which we can follow, or there is no online system of a very good and reliable database where they can just with your phone and they can go and log in that I want to go back. So you have to identify them also, and they also have to get themselves identified to the government that I am the one who has to go. It cannot be a system that a train is parked and people, whoever is interested, they can just sit down. It's not a zoo train. It has to be registered. People need to be checked. There has to be a logistic and food and other requirement need to be arranged as per them. At the same stage, the state also has a role. So union government has a role and the state government has a role. State also has to give a list that how many migrant labor we have and which places we have to send them. So that railway has to plan and route accordingly, and they have to plan the stoppages also accordingly, and train has to go into that way. The kind of problems which has been seen is primarily the context of non-coordination between the state and the central government. State is not giving data. Sometimes center is giving train information late, and sometimes the kind of route railway has taken, it is larger than what they would have reached there. So frustration into people's mind who are sitting in the train from last 2 days or 1 day is high. They would have reached their home, but it is going from different route. A train which is going from Goa to Nagpur has reached somewhere else.
Yeah.
So you can look at it into many ways, and basic difficulties is with each step there has to be a follow-up politics after this, that I am helping, this government is not helping. So in India, politics at times becomes difficult. The differentiation and the formation of state government was not done it so that my state and your state, and in this battle people die. It was done for the purpose of administrative comfort to people. And when it comes to administrative comfort, they need to come into an equation. I'm glad that our central government did not oppose the emergency-like situation and taken over the power of the state government yet. If they would have taken, then there is no issue. But they respected the democratic right of people of the state, that they have elected a government and a party which may not be in the power in the center. So we should not be overstepping on their right, and we should not conduct an emergency procedure. Many countries have, I think Japan has declared emergency. Many countries, I don't remember the list, but they have seen all local political power, and there is one party who is taking all decisions. So what is the resource and what is the logistic and what is the allocation? Per se, it's a linear equation, but in here it has been a difficult part. There might be a number of arguments which you may listen, but this is the prime region, and this will not stop here. This will trouble more. When you are talking about opening up lockdown, then also I told you in the initial talk that people, if they will get stuck, if there are more than 2-3 states they have to cross, and we have smaller states. If you are crossing from Delhi airport and going to Ghaziabad, then you are crossing almost 3 states, sometimes 4 states. In these situations, you have to be stopped at each border of state, and then you have to give them a pass. It has to be revalidated. It needs to be checked, and there has to be a coordination system. If this will not come into power, it will not come into practice, then it is going to create more problem towards the economics, towards the lockdown and its comeback strategy. I believe central government is thinking a lot about it, and they will come out with some solution. When it will come out, I'll definitely come back and give an update to you guys.
No, that would be good. One of the things I find odd is that, you know, again, we have done some travel bans here in the U.S. One of them is to Brazil. And my whole, I read it briefly. I'm going to read it in more detail because it doesn't make any sense to me the way it reads. But why don't we just get smart, kind of do like Iceland did? But we've got test kits now, right? Even though they're probably 85% accurate, why don't we just start testing, right? You want to travel somewhere, do the rapid test set, right? Get tested and go. When you get there, 24 hours later, get tested again. It's just no different than testing yourself for diabetes, so it can't be that dangerous, right? So give it another 24 hours, and while you're there, just test yourself again. And then there's nothing wrong with testing yourself for 14 days just to make sure you didn't pick up something in the transfer. But then also, trace where you've been. Utilize your cell phone. Don't turn it off, and utilize your cell phone to trace where you've been, or do a quarantine of people who travel, right? You traveled from Brazil to here, you're going to have to stay 14 days at this particular hotel. And we test you, every day until we know that you're clean and good to go. I just think that that's just a good process we could do, just temporary. It doesn't have to be forever, but just testing every day until we get control over it. It's just, to me, a cheaper alternative than shutting down a whole country, shutting down traveling 100%. But it would make it safer. If you tested everyone before they came on a plane for fever and to see if they have the antibodies, that's it. You've probably saved 50% of the people who were being infected from infecting other people. That was just a thought. Anyone got any input on testing?
No, I think so. I mean, I believe that we should set up a medical clinic, or maybe something, or maybe a small airport hospital, and we should screen everyone, because whenever we go to an airport, we have to, we have to reach there a couple of hours before the flight starts. And I think we should utilize that time, and we should screen a lot of people, and that way we can screen them, we can diagnose them. If they don't have COVID, that's also fine, but maybe we can get something out of their diagnosis, and we can treat them. I mean, it's more about health and health as well. And if we start from airport, and then suppose the flight is of 2 hours, and that person, once he reaches out to the other city, they have the reports ready at the airport.
Right. I mean, it's
also,
such a simple.
Abhijeet, you need to unmute. You have muted yourself.
Yeah, Abhijeet, and Sasha has input. Sasha wants to say.
The issue is not with the air travel. Issue is primarily with the train travel. In air travel, I think last 3 rows of each aircraft is being set. It has been kept reserved for people who are showing any sort of symptom. It may be a small sneezing, or it may be a little cough, or they have a high temperature. So last 3 rows is given to them. Other than that, the people who are only allowed to sit in aircraft is in the middle row, in the middle seat. Right and left is clear. You cannot sit on them. Price of air travel is high now, domestic flights also, and you are supposed to be touching least things into the aircraft. And places where your hands and your body is getting touched, it is getting thoroughly sanitized after each flight. Then again, people who are interacting with the ground staff, and ground staff is under protective gear. And what I told you in the earlier episode, that there is an interface plastic also between ground staff and the passengers. The main problem which we might be facing, and which you are asking very rightly, is how do we quarantine people who have came from train? The situation of train is not so good. The social distancing is not very well maintained. Population is very high. It's not only high, it's panicking also. And they have different sort of difficulties, like since it is not well coordinated, sometimes difficulty of water, sometimes difficulty of sanitation, sometimes difficulty of food, and primarily the difficulty of route and the timing which they are spending on the wheels. So these are the things which are irritating people, and people are into that panic, are breaking rules and sometimes compromising their own security. So that is the reason that they are not relying on any of the tests. When you are reaching, mandatorily you are being kept 14 days quarantine. If you develop a symptom in between, let's not take any chance. So the testing on the way, and then since it is taking more than 2 days to reach few places in India by train, it is better to have them completely quarantined into 14 days. And if they develop symptoms, then they will be treated more extensively. This is what happening now.
I think
are we up for the immunity soon?
Are you affording?
I said, do you think the immunity passport? I mean, we can talk about or maybe implement the immunity passport and share our health details while we're traveling abroad.
Immunity
I
passport.
today, and I think there would be a database very soon where people would be in order to reach out more people, and more people would have an interest into air travel, and they want to put their immunity in that way that the testing and the other stuff does not come in between and does not stop them from traveling. Then this idea of immunity passport maybe more will come into more center stage. Not
That's
now.
interesting. Sasha, you wanted to say something on the subject matter. What was
Yes, very quickly about testing. As we know, they are not 100% accurate. Most of them are 85% accurate. It's a very large number, 15%, if you consider that it's such an important outcome of test, and 15% is a really large number. Then second issue, I'm not so sure how quickly you get result of the test, and whether the result is for antibodies or results are for basically you have infected yourself or not. So there are drawbacks of tests. Now, speaking now about the complete picture of coronavirus is, it's just accelerated a lot of political, economical, and many other processes in the world. It's speeded up tremendously um, the fight for superiority between US and China. And in fact, the fight is all open air fair. It's now it's existential fight, even if there will be no military confrontation, but there will be a huge economical and political confrontation, and it will be more and more difficult for Europe to stand aside and just see who will prevail, and then take the winner side or the loser side, if you prefer. Europe will have to sooner or later, and I think rather sooner, to make a stance where they are. And it will be very, very difficult, highly political decision. And even European Union doesn't have a unanimous decision on many issues. And some countries like Hungary, Poland, they have very independent points of view. In many cases, they're doing quite well for their countries and citizens, for their system, political. For example, as you know, for several years now, they disallow any immigration to these countries. They're just not taking anybody, period. Just say no, 100%, no immigrants are allowed. So this way, they keeping their countries quite homogeneous as the nationality, the language is concerned, the way of life, the customs, the religion, anything, just name it. And therefore, you may say that they are going into nationalistic policies and so on. It might as well be, but a situation like this, it works really well. They have many less cases than a lot of developed countries. And now you are questioning whole system and wisdom of this uncontrollable immigration of citizens, especially from I don't know, North Africa or the Middle East or something like that, in countries of Western Europe like France, Italy, and so on. Italy is one of the example when they dearly paid for allowing, for example, Chinese to travel uncontrollable back and forth, and you know what's happened as a result of it. And I have one. He's a scientist. I just listened to his lecture on a Russian television program, and he's a man of culture. He loves museum and he travels a lot. And he's saying that, look, the Europe is completely different today than it was even 20, 25 years ago. Like before, I would go to Louvre and I would look at Gioconda and I would stare for 8 hours. Today, you're going there and you're standing like this, there are all kinds of people, all those Chinese people barefoot, and they're coming there and they're breathing at you. And you can't even stay there even for 5 minutes and just watch it. So you have to leave for all practical purposes. No, does anybody need a Europe like that? Probably not, at least not me. And I'm applauding to countries like Poland and Hungary with all their problems and way of developing a normal Western European way of life. But at least what they're doing, you can criticize it, but there are a lot of wisdom in that. And I'm with both hands for it.
I think that there's, people are putting some good thought into this. Again, I'm just, thrilled that one country was able to have actually a pandemic plan in place, and it worked out for them. But hello and welcome to David K. Johnson. How are you doing?
Glad to be here.
Good afternoon. Happy Memorial Day.
Got rid of the mountain man look.
Yeah, you're looking good. Very sharp.
3 months.
So the barber shop. Did you go to the barber shop?
No, my 8th child, who's a lyricist, also turns out she could be a hairstylist. I'm sorry.
There you go. Ankit became a hairstylist. Ankit does his own barber work, and I've been running into a lot of people who've been doing their own. But welcome and happy Memorial Day, and thank you for joining us today and talking about the financial situations that each country's in and how we can pull this out together and what it's looking like. What does our future look like today?
Well, we just ran a piece at DC Report, the news service that I'm the chief editor of. This happened to be a piece that I wrote. And it's about the data showing that the growth of money in this country, the United States, is at more than double the previous record rate.
Can you explain growth of money real quick?
Yes, the narrowest measure of money is bills and coins in circulation, bank deposits, and traveler's checks. Traveler's checks are minimal. And for years, the growth rate has been between about 4% and 7% a year. Under Obama, after the economy turned around, it was 6%. Under Trump, until the pandemic, it was about 4.5%, so it was smaller. In the last 90 days, M1 in America grew 42%. And bank deposits are at record levels. Institutional money market funds are at record levels. And what we're seeing is wealth and want growing at the same time. So we have people who don't need help, who got it, and who went out and borrowed money in the markets at the extraordinarily low interest rates we have today. And so there are individuals and institutions that are flush with cash beyond any possible need for a couple of years. And then you have people who can't buy groceries, which is why you see these miles-long lines of people who can afford the payments on new cars. Those cars look pretty nice and shiny overall, who can't get groceries for their children. And it's indicative of the kind of mismanagement that we've seen. Now, just a couple of hours ago, the New York Times put up a report by Jesse Drucker, one of their best financial writers, and Sarah Silver Greenberg and Sarah Cliff, who are also excellent reporters, about how a number of hospitals in the U.S. have an enormous cash pile, billions and billions of dollars, and they've added to these, and they got money from the government through these. And so what we're seeing is, at the moment, wealth and want both growing. But what we will see coming out of this, because we will eventually get past this, is going to be greater inequality, greater concentration of power in narrow hands, and less competition. And in the 2008 Great Recession, which we are far past now, we are at the levels of the Great Depression of 1929 to 1933 in terms of unemployment and human misery. What we're going to see coming out of this will be, just after 2008, fewer banks having a larger share of the market, we may even see fewer airlines. There's been the head of Boeing has talked about he expects at least one airline to go under. I'd be surprised if it's only one, but I don't think it'll be one of the big 5 major airlines. But some airline, like a smaller one, like Allegiant or Spirit. And this is not good. Capitalism requires market competition. And if there's anything people in business hate, including me, when my oldest son and I started a business that we've since shut down, but that was very successful for a decade, the one thing we hated was competition, because competition means less profit. But capitalism doesn't work if it doesn't have competition. It becomes a mining system to extract cash down below and move it up without creating economic growth. So we're really laying the grounds here for some real problems down the road.
David, a question, very quick question to you. David, what's the difference between recession and depression?
Oh, they're just terms. We over the course of history and since the Civil War in America, we've called them panics, recessions, depressions. The real issue is, how deep is it? Now,
okay, I have even better answer, David. I have this answer. A recession, it's when your neighbor is out of job. Depression is when you are.
Yeah, that's a good joke. But most of the news media in the U.S. does an incredibly good job of reporting official announcements. You can rely on them and whatnot. At DC Report, my colleagues and I, who are former senior people at the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, the LA Times, we, enterprise and go look at things. And so we reported weeks ago, I think it may well be over a month ago now, that the unemployment rate in the United States was going to be 25% momentarily, and likely 32%. We're clearly above 25% unemployment. We've had 39 million people in 9 weeks apply for jobless benefits, and there are about 158 million jobs. So clearly we're well above 25%. A few people have gone back to work, but not many. That puts us at the level of the Great Depression from, remember there were two depressions, 29 to 33, and then we were recovering, and then FDR was persuaded to cut back on government spending, and we went into another depression that started in 37, a recession in that case. And the worst unemployment in the Great Depression was just under 25% at the beginning of 1933. Well, we're there or past that. Now add to that the fact that the 2008 depression, or Great Recession of 2008, resulted in wiping out the wealth, the minimal wealth of families headed by parents 35 and under. Their wealth just went away. Of African Americans, and a substantial reduction for everyone in the bottom 90%. And we're now back into that situation. Lots of people are doing fine, by the way. I mean, I'm a good example of that. My wife is still working. I'm still working. I have a job that I can do from home, and I'm a retiree, so I still get my Social Security and my pensions. We're better off, which is ridiculous, but we are. And there are lots of people, because we're not spending money. Money we used to spend, we're not spending now. I still have February's gas in my Volkswagen.
Yeah, right.
I driven 151 miles in the last 6 weeks, where I leave the house to go out and have somebody put, like milk in the trunk of the car. That's it. And so huge disruptions under this. Yes, I'm sorry, Abhijeet.
I have a question from you, Mr. David Kane Johnson, that usually I think all of you would agree in a very basic idea of recession, that it is something which has happened, which you or me or nobody predicted. It happened in 2008, and again, due to this pandemic, it is happening now. Our economies will go back into recession. So if I've been a banker in my initial career, so if we look at a recession and possibility of getting into recession as a risk, then obviously we have to do some risk management. Since 2008 till today, globe and the world economies and the country's economies must have done some investment on the risk management to manage risks, that we should not land up into such equation or into such situation again after 2008. And primarily I see it did not happen. Due to economic reason, it did not happen. It happened because of a health issue and a virus attack and etc. So at this stage of time, if you are supposed to be evaluating that what kind of investment they made to meet a risk, which is a possible and potential risk, then, and where we are standing now, and now if we are terribly shaken and now we are trembling, then are we going to do such investment into future for coming out of this or not?
Well, in the United States, we'll do that when we have a change of government and we have different leaders in the U.S. Senate and the White House. But you're onto something that's very, very important. I'm gathering material to write a series of pieces about this. Our biggest concern in the U.S. right now is not an inflation because of all this money. It's a deflation because there's no demand. Coming out of this, we need to be investing in a number of things. Infrastructure. I mean, the U.S. is beginning to look like a third world country. The biggest beneficiaries of this are front-end alignment shops. I can't tell you how many times I've had to take my cars in to get the wheels aligned again because of potholes. We need to start fixing our infrastructure, which will generate a lot of economic activity and make the economy more efficient. We need to go back to spending money on two areas of science: basic research, which we've fundamentally cut, and basic science research is only funded by governments, occasionally a philanthropist, but it's governments. Corporations don't spend money on basic research. We need to go back to the 1950s and 60s policy of the US government of spending money on applying science in practical ways. There's a book by two MIT economists, one of them's named Gruber, and I'm sorry the name isn't coming up in my memory, but it talks about how to rebuild the American economy by investing in hiring companies to do science-related work. And interestingly, Rochester, New York, where I live, is, in their view, the #1 city in America to begin rebuilding the American economy. This has always been a big industrial innovation center from essentially the Civil War till 1975. Rochester was Silicon Valley, Seattle, and Route 128 wrapped up in one. But it was an industrial economy. We're now in the digital economy, heading into the biologic or genetic economy.
Right.
Then we need to have a significant redoing in America of our education system. We are still saddled with a 19th century education system designed to move us from an agrarian culture to an industrial one. So we taught people reading, writing, and simple numbers. But we did not teach critical thinking skills. We teach a horribly dishonest history of our country. I've always been struck by the fact that all of my friends who are Russian or Ukrainian know American history better than anybody I know in America who's not a history professor. And yeah, I mean, they can tell you about all sorts of events in American history that Americans are simply not taught about because we have this very dishonest history about our Civil War, about racism, scientific advance. And we've created a culture in the US in the last, I would argue, about 40 years of denigrating education. I was on a radio show about 10 years ago now where this call-in show, the person said, "Oh, you're one of those elite." And I went, "Well, thank you." And he said, "What?" I said, "Thank you, sir. I mean, as somebody who grew up poor, blue collar environment, if you think I'm an elite, that's an incredible honor, and I appreciate it." And then I said, "You have no idea what that word means, do you, sir? You should get a dictionary and look it up." And we have this real problem in America that we have made an honor to be stupid, to be moronic, or in the ancient Greek meaning of the word, an idiot. Only caring about yourself and not about the society around you. So I think absolutely, Abhijeet, we need to have significant investments. America needs huge capital expenditure investments. The 2017 Trump tax cut was advertised as, oh, there'll be massive capital investment here in America by business. No, there wasn't. They bought stock buybacks and they created an incentive to invest overseas because your profits are minimally taxed by the U.S. if you earn them overseas, and all you need to do is find a country that is so desperate for jobs they don't care if they collect revenue from you or much revenue. And we need to fundamentally rework a lot of things in America, and I'm hoping that coming out of this, that's what we do. We fix education, we go back to investing in basic science, applied science through government spending. We change this culture that stupid is something to be proud of. But it's a big cultural shift. And in the meantime, your country, I assume you're from India. Yes?
What is Abhijeet?
Yes, he's from India.
Okay.
He's there you go.
Yes.
Yes. India and China were the two wealthiest countries in the world 500 years ago. They are on their way back to achieving that. It won't happen in my lifetime, but they're getting there. And in China, what is holding it back is the oppressive communist regime at the top that limits creativity and freedom, and that's under stress because of that. And in India, it's this just abominable legal system that the British brought that is sclerotic and holding up the growth of the society. And once you deal with those, and there's some other challenges, but those are sort of the big ones in each country, I fully expect that both China and India are going to go back to being very wealthy countries. That doesn't mean they won't have poverty, they will, but they're going to be much better off than they are today. And the US needs to recognize we're in a new era. One of the things we're doing in the United States is, we're now spend on national security, not just the military, but spying and electronic surveillance and all that. Close to $1 trillion a year if you add the share of the national debt that we've created through this. And yet, we're building aircraft carriers that cost $13 billion and then a fleet of ships around them that make it $25 to $30 billion investment. You can take it all out with one missile. This makes no sense. This is not the warfare of the future. We're back trying to refight World War II.
Why do we want to build to tear down? I mean, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it is. That's a great thing to put up the debt clock. The debt itself is not a problem. The U.S. government can spend any amount of money it wants. The history shows that when governments spend money that they have borrowed by putting money out, the people are better off because it's a liability to the government. It's an asset to us.
Right.
You just have to do it in relation to economic production and activity. And by the way, one of the things I expect that will come out of this will be some kind of a program for the failed small businesses in America, where we'll probably make loans that can be turned into grants to restart your business or start a new business if you're a business owner. Because we're going to see tons of small businesses fold simply because they don't have they're lightly capitalized and they can't take the shock.
David, are you aware that the PPP that they gave out was supposed to go to a lot of the small businesses, but they changed the business model, they capped it. And so a lot of the companies, they only got $1,000. They didn't even get the rubber stamp 10,000.
Well,
all of the money went to the big companies, not the little companies.
And that's, I think, because it was what it was intended by this administration, was to jockey the rules in that way. I went to see if the charity I run could get a loan to cover our 2 months of our payroll.
Right.
And I went to my bank, the bank for the charity, DC report, minutes after they said they would be open. I mean, within 5 minutes. And there was an announcement saying we're already have taken all the applications we can handle.
I've got a confirmation number, and so I should have qualified for just the rubber stamp loan and didn't get anything. But Magic Johnson got so upset because the minority businesses did not get any money. The minority businesses did not qualify for any money. There shouldn't have been.
The Trump administration would allow a policy that was bad for minorities.
Right. So, yeah. So anyway, so Magic Johnson, I know you're probably aware of this, put up $100 million with his partnering bank to do a PPP, the 75, 25% forgiveness loan. Now, if you read the rules, you'll learn how to make it 100%, which I did. I read all the rules, and I filled out the form. I got a confirmation number. And I qualified for a lot more money. This is for a real loan. This isn't for the PPP 10K. The format was so simple compared to the one that Trump's administration put out. And I filled out the form. I read the rules. And if you read the rules, you'll learn how to make it 100% forgiven. Right. And but he was more about giving you the money you need to sustain, not just here's a couple dollars to get you by. He was
well, and this is really important to economic growth. I mean, I asked my wife; she runs a $500 million charity,
wow.
and I asked her what would happen if your half your staff left, and she was like, "Oh, it would take us years to recover because." There's all these skills. You have to know the community. It's a community foundation. You have to know the community. You have to know the agencies. You have to know what people want to give. You have to know tax law. The whole variety of things. She has people on her staff that they know. So the Danes, I think, have been very smart about this. They basically said, we're going to give companies money to keep people on their payroll so that when this passes, and it'll become endemic, and we will have cures, if not a vaccine, we'll have reliable treatments, and we move forward. That's a much smarter way to do it than what we've done. But, that this administration, run by the worst predators on Wall Street, even though it was promised we get the opposite, of course it's going to rig the game for big companies and going to cut out every way it legally can minorities. I mean, there's no question about the hostility of Donald Trump and the people around him. And I've known Donald, as you know, for 32 years, covered him longer than any other American journalist. Donald's a racist to the core. And his policies reflect that.
And the thing is that a lot of people don't realize that in the loan process, I don't know of any minority that got it. And the few minorities that might have, they only got the $1,000, not the $10,000. What does $1,000 buy you in this scheme of an 8-week period, or even 10? Magic Johnson, I will say, I commend him. I'll vote for him for president at this point.
Yeah. The money is bupkis in the size of the American economy, but he's showing by example what we could be doing, and that's what's really important about it. Because the amount of money, $100 million, is a drop in the bucket in a $22 trillion economy.
I even asked, because we know that a lot of the millionaires and billionaires, the real successful people, are slightly impacted by this, but still have good money. And I even asked, why can't we say, okay, if you guys put up loans, this was just before Magic did this, right, put up loans and get 100% tax deduction for it. Because, in a donation kind of program, you're capped at what you get back. So why not just say that any of these millionaires and billionaires or people with money that put up a means to help support the small businesses will get 100% tax?
Well, Congress could enact a tax credit that allows you to do that rather than a tax deduction.
And no cap.
But the problem is Mitch McConnell, the majority leader in the Senate, has already said he wants to cut back on the aid going to ordinary Americans. And that's because Mitch McConnell, who grew up with a trust fund, good for him.
Silver spoon.
He's worried, oh my goodness, people will want to be on the dole instead of working, never mind all the evidence to the contrary. And, right now what we're seeing in Washington through the Senate and the White House is an American government of the rich, by the rich, for the rich. And not just all the rich, but the worst people among the rich in America. And passing a tax credit would be a very smart idea to encourage this, to encourage investments. We could come up with a whole variety of strategies to do that. But nothing like that will happen until at least January 3rd of next year, when we have a new Congress.
Well, and it might not happen then, because it depends on who's in Congress.
And who's in control. And if the Republicans gain control of the Senate, we will just, tread along with the most minimal possible help to people who aren't at the top.
Just like I believe that if they would just to help give a stronger, quicker relief, just say, okay, nobody pay their taxes right now. Just get yourself recovered, use what money you have to get yourself back on your feet, but don't put any pressure on anybody. But they're not doing that. I want to tell you what, the one, how they've made people where they can't get thrown out of their homes and stuff like that. The one thing that didn't change was your tax debt. They may have delayed it, but they are not. If we're going
to have relief for buyers and renters of their homes, then we have to provide relief for landlords to the degree that they're leveraged. I mean, there's some landlords who, once they pay off their loans, they keep the property because they got great cash flow. But that's not the norm. Most of them swap into another piece of property, take out more non-recourse debt. And we need to, small business people, including landlords, need help as much as working people. So, Sasha, where do you live?
Toronto, Canada.
In Toronto. Okay.
We are neighbors, practically.
Okay. Well, one of my children is a Canadian citizen. She's a lawyer in suburban Toronto. Represents children. She's a child advocacy lawyer. How do you see the government in Toronto, the federal government, the provincial government of Ontario, and the municipality of Toronto dealing with this in economic terms?
Well, Canadian dollar, of course, as we know, is not a reserve currency, and therefore Canada has to be very careful with this foreign debt, which for a small country like Canada, only 36 million people live in Canada, although territory is huge, but as we all know, we all live across 49 parallels. So the issue is to keep the foreign deficit down. And I've noticed one thing: you were not too concerned about $25 trillion of U.S. national debt. But I have one question, David. I remember in the beginning of 2000s, and specifically during this, let's call it recession of 2008-9, the foreign debt level of U.S. government was around $8-9 trillion. It's large enough. Never mind today's 25 trillion, but even 8-9 is large enough. However, the all national level of all goods, all the equity of households of the United States of America at the time was over $100 trillion. And it doesn't even include the corporations like Microsoft, Apple, and others, just households. Today's households of the United States of America are approximately at the level of $41 trillion. Now, with a national debt of $25 trillion, it's approaching the level of the equity of all U.S. households put together. Is that not so dangerous in your opinion?
Well,
David, it's a very interesting discussion, but thank you all. I have to leave now. Alex and David, it was especially very good